Data protection and privacy teams are under more pressure than ever with new laws, AI oversight, data breaches, and the constant expectation to do more with fewer resources.
That's why TrustArc built a modern privacy and data protection management platform powered by Arc Intelligence. It unifies your tools, automates the work that slows you down, and surfaces what matters most right when you need it.
From guided quick actions to our intelligent assistant, Ask Arc, you get credible, contextual answers backed by expert research, not generic AI guesses.
Finally, privacy that works the way privacy pros work.
Learn how TrustArc helps teams move faster with confidence at trustarc.com/serious-privacy. That's trustarc.com/serious-privacy.
You're listening to the award-winning Serious Privacy podcast sponsored by TrustArc. Please welcome your hosts, Paul Breitbart, Ralph O'Brien, and Dr. Kay Royal.
Hey, Serious Privacy fans. So we are back to bringing you a wonderful week in privacy. Ralph and I are teed up just to scan through the most recent events for the past 1, 2, 3 weeks. How long has it been since we've done a week in privacy? So I'm not even going to list them in the introduction here because we're just going to go wild and go unscripted, and that's what we do when Paul's not here to keep us in control. So with that, I'm Kay Royal.
And my name is Ralph O'Brien, and for a change, I get to say, and welcome to Serious Privacy.
I think you pronounced something wrong there. I don't think it sounds the way that you think it sounds. All right, so we are going to... I told y'all I have really ridiculous, unexpected questions here. So here we go, Paul. You ready?
Paul.
So, oh my God. That was a Freudian slip to Paul's not here. So Ralph and I are going to have a crazy question, but I want to save a certain one for Paul because they're really cool. Okay, we're just going to go here. Okay, here we go. This is a good one for me and you, Ralph. How many cookies could you put in your pocket at a fancy party before you became too self-conscious?
Oh, there's no limit. I'm totally shameless. It is one of the nice things. You get to go to occasionally a number of really nice data protection events where people serve canapes and such like. I've got a big thing for sliders, actually.
Yes, I was going to say rolls, the fabulous rolls.
Little mini burgers. And I'm not the smallest man in the world, so I'm a little bit shameless when it comes to cookies and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but wear skinny britches. How far out are those pockets going to poke before you look like a chipmunk waddling down the street?
That's true. Yeah, that is true. You've got to find places to put them. That's why I wear a three-piece suit when I'm at work.
Oh, there you go. I was going to say that's what the good jacket is for, right? Now, for me, they don't give women really good pockets in our fancy dresses. The velvet I wore to the Picasso, no pockets. Now, I probably could have cut a hole in the big poofy shawl and started throwing stuff in there, but let's be honest, they didn't have any really good gluten-free cookies for me to be stealing anyway. But I do usually have a handbag of some sort, so I can generally put like 2 or 3, and I don't feel self-conscious. If I have to walk around with a napkin folded around cookies.
No, you're right. You've got to have some place to put them where you don't get home and just find a mush.
Exactly. And we all know there's a shelf life on gluten-free ones anyway. So when Paul hears this, he's going to shake his head and go, y'all are fired.
Actually, since you talk about gluten-free, because we're on the Serious Privacy Cooking Show, I can actually tell you I've got a gluten-free spotted dick in the steamer.
Ooh, I don't even know if that sounds appetizing or not.
Yeah, it's an English thing. A spotted dick is a suet steamed dumpling pudding.
Okay. Never knew that. Wasn't even appetizing sounding enough to look it up online. There we go. But I have been following this guy on Instagram. It's 2 Brits who spend a lot of time over in the U.S. And so they started doing their tours about 2 Brits trying American food. And they would try all these wonderful culinary things that we have around here and be like, oh my God, that's fabulous, or that's horrible, or we don't do this, or anything like that. And that is one thing they were talking about is some of the words that you can use in the UK that you cannot use in the US, and vice versa, words that we use here in the US that if we used them in the UK, it'd be like, no.
Yeah.
I think one of them was, and I can't say the word because I'm in the U.S., what we consider a vulgar word. that starts with a C. I think that's common parlance. He was saying over in the UK, it's just used as part of daily conversation. Doesn't mean anything really good or really bad. It's not a thing.
You wouldn't say it to your mother, but certainly if you're having a drink with your friends, it's more of a term of endearment, yes.
Yeah, no, not so much here. Yeah, really. But then again, I'm never a person that has really adopted the habit of calling my girlfriends bad names. If they do something, you'd be like, oh, you bitch. And you mean it. I love you. You're out there.
Yeah.
I've never been one that's adopted that, but that's probably more because I'm very deep Southern.
On that thing of translations across the pond, I will never forget my confusion the first time I was in a cab in New York and the driver told me to get in and sit on my fanny, which is a very different thing here. Moving on.
I think that was one of the things that he brought up. We Americans say fanny all the time, and no, not in England. You don't say that. All righty. Shall we actually get to actually bringing the news? And I will say that I owe an apology to a potential guest that was supposed to be scheduled, and I thought I sent him the calendar invite, and I didn't. Roy Smith, who was the guy that founded Privacy Check. So I will do my best to actually get my act together and send him an invite. So let's talk about the news. What has happened this past week?
Let me jump in because I've got a good one. You say week, it's probably been a month.
Yeah, it has been since we've done anything, right?
It has, but actually the big one yesterday was from the Spanish Data Protection Authority, the Agencia Española de Protección de Datos, the APD. Actually find a UK digital identity company, that's YOTI Limited, €950,000. And what's interesting about that is YOTI is an age verification company, a digital identity company, but obviously they were delivering their services to people in Spain, so extraterritorial extent applied. And it was the unlawful processing of biometric data with special category data without legal basis, invalid consent for research and development purposes,
Wow.
and excessive data retention. So triple whammy there. But what's interesting is we're increasingly using these digital identity companies. We're increasingly using age verification companies. You look around the internet and you're seeing websites for adult content or social media, with age gating quite a lot on the internet. And I think there's a counter concern about how much information these digital verification companies gather.
Right.
So to see a penalty from the Spanish ABD of almost €1 million for exactly those concerns.
Wow.
Very on topic, very on trend.
Very much. And on a similar note, the California Consumer or California Privacy Protection Agency just fined Play On Sports for $1.1 million for forced consent.
Forced consent?
Forced consent, that their banner was only about accept. And this was the first ever one for the CPPA enforcing the CCPA against student privacy, which means ed tech, sports, in services that touch student data. So this was their first one involving student data, but it was because they had dark patterns and only had an agree button. Honor the signal. They didn't honor the opt-out preference signals, which is an automatic violation. And then inventory is mandatory. So they're now ordered to conduct quarterly scans to maintain an accurate inventory of their tracking technology. And see, they could do that with TrustArc. Throw that in there. Y'all know I'm a raving TrustArc fan, which is why they're a sponsor. If they're ever not a sponsor, we'll holler and let y'all know.
Bit of news back here from the good old U of the K. And that is our MPs, I've been talking a lot about this, have been discussing about banning social media for under 16s. That went to Parliament, and the yeses were 173, and the noes were 307. So no under 16 social media ban here in the UK, at least not at the moment. But under a different law, they have snuck in a power under one of the criminal justice laws to impose digital ID checks. Now, we were just talking about YOTI as a digital identity provider who'd been fined by the AEBD. but digital ID checks, curfews, VPN restrictions without parliamentary scrutiny. Now, this is a piece of what we call secondary legislation. So the power now exists in the primary legislation to say to essentially the Secretary of State, who would probably be the head of the Department of Science, Innovation and Technology, to pass secondary regulations without going through Parliament to age gate or impose digital identity checks or curfews or VPN restrictions on websites, social media, apps, games at their whim. So critics would say that this broad amendment takes power away from Parliament and Ofcom and hands it to ministers, whereas supporters would say, let's protect children online. And what's really interesting about it is this came a couple of days after they published a consultation on under 16 use of the internet, on social media, on age verification, on age gating. And so we've got this vote that said no. We've got another law that says that they can do it, which they said they were passing only if the consultation said yes. It strikes me as a bit of a mess over here. You've got a consultation going on. They're passing laws before the consultation is finished and taking votes that have said no.
Sounds like a perfect storm, or just another day in privacy, right?
Yeah, and I think there is a whole think of the children. And don't get me wrong, I do think that children have higher needs and can be more vulnerable when it comes to their risk appetites and the use of social media and such. And it's certainly easier to become exposed to things than it used to be. But at the same time, it's a great source of community and learning and support for those people who don't feel like they have a community or perhaps need support they can't get from their family and friends locally. These are really interesting issues that are going to go forwards. And I think governments are really struggling with their approaches, right? There's some loud voices on both sides of the defense. And I think that's reflected in this whole sort of legal parliamentary malaise or morass or activity that we're seeing. Everyone wants to be seen to be doing something. Yet how effective these are going to be in practice is always going to be an issue if you can just stick in a VPN, and I don't think they can ban them.
Can't really do that.
Very strange. This is a situation. Again, it's another watch this space, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. The space changes almost daily sometimes, although there are times when it seems like it's really slow. I feel like I need to say that while I knock on wood, because you say that and then everything bursts out of the woodwork, right?
Another one here from South Africa. So you would be aware of POPI, which is, I love that name of the law, POPI.
Yes.
Yeah. So under POPI in South Africa, that's their data protection law. There's a new set of regulations being published quite recently. This is the 6th of March for health information, and they came in with immediate effect with no grace period.
Love that no grace period, especially when they're upfront about it, right? And they're like, yep, nope, you got no grace period. Do it now or die.
Yeah, so these are the regulations relating to the processing of data subjects' health information by certain responsible parties for 2026. And actually, whilst you get things like HIPAA in the US that just look at certain health insurers, for example, this is actually for health data. So it would even apply to employers processing health data that aren't in the healthcare sector. Really wide reaching as a sort of a law. It just really looks at healthcare in terms of the data rather than the actual industry.
Right, which is a big difference there.
Yeah.
So let me see what stories I have on this side of the pond or in the Southern Hemisphere. We're not limited. We're not limited at all.
We do have to get in a guest to talk about the law in India. We keep saying that needs to happen. We are conscious. We're on it.
Yep, we are. And we got people in India. We just need to make them happen. We try not to schedule guests more than every other week. That way, every other week, y'all get at least a week in privacy. We've fallen down on that a little bit and been a little guest heavy, which is why I'm not upset that today was a week in privacy. So exactly. We're on it. We're on it. We hear y'all. We're on it. We got it. So let's see what we have.
Wasn't there a comprehensive law passed in Maine on March the 6th? The Maine Online Data Privacy Act, which will take effect in July, as I understand it?
Yes, there's a Maine law. Did Maine actually pass a law?
The Maine state law is based after Maryland's law. So data minimization, sensitive data sales, consumer rights, opt out for targeted advertising, prohibition on minors, political or exempt, LD 1822, as I understand it.
Yeah, I didn't realize that had been signed into law. It passed out of the Senate. It was previously passed by the House, but it was amended in the Senate, so it has to go back to the House for concurrence. So I don't know if that means that it has been signed into law.
Ah, okay. So just come out the Senate.
Yeah, like I said, they said it was amended in the Senate, went back to the House for concurrence, and so I don't know that it was signed into law yet, but keep your eyes on that one, and that way you'll know when and if it does pass. It should pass, right? We don't expect governors to turn these down what they have. So a couple of other ones that we've got is Virginia's SB 338. It amends their Privacy Act to prohibit controllers from selling or offering for sale precise geolocation data. Utah's HB 357 also passed the legislature. It applies Utah's privacy law to motor vehicle manufacturers, regardless of the law's existing applicability standard. So go figure, we're seeing vehicular privacy, much different from vehicular manslaughter, actually come into play in privacy laws. And as we've discussed before, it typically takes something happening before lawmakers actually change what we're looking at, right? You have to see something happening, and unfortunately, it's usually something bad. But as we've covered a lot of these vehicular privacy issues that we've seen in enforcement cases, it's nice to see laws coming out to start address that. And then Minnesota's HF 2700 was referred back to the committee. It amends Minnesota's law to add consumer health provisions. Now, we do have some, if we're going to be in the U.S., might as well go here. We do have some going for children's privacy. So 2 bills advanced last week. Utah's App Store amendment passed the legislature, and Colorado's digital age assurance passed out of the Senate with a successful vote of 28-7. But 2 died. So in New Hampshire, the children's privacy one, actually both, children's privacy and the App Store, they were basically killed. And then South Dakota's App Store bill failed to get out of a city committee. Now, city committee, listen to me, a Senate committee. And that bill had previously passed the House. One thing, if you're not very familiar with U.S. law and how it passes, and I know we've discussed that there are different legislative seasons for U.S. lawmakers. So some states have a 2-year season. Some states have an every other year season. Some states have a full year, every year season. Some states have an abbreviated season 1 year and a long season the next year. You just have to look at it, which is why sometimes when a bill doesn't pass, it doesn't mean it's dead.
Right. Yeah.
Unless it was voted on as a failure, sometimes it's still alive. But even if it doesn't pass, it doesn't get voted on, it can still be resubmitted the next year. It just depends on how passionate the lawmaker is on submitting. And sometimes it really takes education. So the other thing to look at, and this part we haven't really covered, is if a bill is assigned to 3 or 4 committees, that is the leadership's way of effectively killing the bill.
That's interesting. You just keep it in committee forever, right?
Yep, it's in committee forever, and if it gets out of one, then it goes to another. So typically, the more promising ones might be assigned 1, maybe 2 committees. But if you see it assigned to 3 or 4 committees, the leadership is not looking for that bill to actually come to fruition.
Wow.
So South Carolina's App Store bill also failed to get out of a Senate committee. As you can see, we have a lot of App Store bills coming around here. Biometrics, New York's 2539 advanced to a 3rd reading. You usually have to have 3 readings. In order to get there, it says that retailers have to post warning signs if they track customers through cell phones, cameras, or other electronic devices, or if they collect biometric information. Side note for biometric information, on our vacation, we were on a cruise and we did the really cool thing where they take a close-up picture of your eye and then blow it up for a really cool image. Now, I'll go ahead and post this image because I don't have any biometrics that use my eye. It doesn't really matter to me, but I'll show this to Ralph so he can see how very cool it is.
And I'll take a screenshot. In 5 years' time, when we're all banking with our eyes, I'll be able to deepfake myself as Kate. Oh, that's beautiful, because it's like both eyes like merged into one, like a figure eight.
Yep. My brown eye and my husband's blue eye. The lady was raving over my brown eye. She's, oh my God, look at the depth you have in there. That's amazing. I'm like, yeah, eye doctors love my eye. Now, the other image that
That's beautiful.
we did was where they put the two eyes together like it's exploding. Isn't that wicked? So I'll post a picture.
Cool
like I said, I'll post one. Actually, maybe I'll post this dual combined one with the exploding. I don't have anything that has my irises as biometrics to gain anything, so I don't care. So it's really cool. Okay. Biometric privacy. New York's went to a third reading. Minnesota has an introduction of one for biometric. Data brokers. Rhode Island lawmakers have a new data broker bill that was filed by 6 Democrats and 1 Republican. I don't know why that's important. And then Hawaii, SB 1163 was reported out of committee with a recommendation of passage on the third reading. It prohibits the sale of geolocation information and internet browsing information. Now, I need to go look at the bill that says whether or not sale is strictly for money or if it includes anything of value, right? We don't know. But it also prohibits the sale of data collected through eavesdropping. or an application operating in the background of a device that uses the device's microphone. So somebody in Hawaii is getting a little cool here, right?
Yeah, that's interesting.
I was not alerted to that one early. I might have to go read that one and become a raving fan. So I know there were other things. I just happened to get caught on the U.S. side. Ralph, I could turn over to you. I've been talking for a little bit. What you got next up?
No, that's fine. The only other thing I'm aware about in the US actually was, again, probably heading to a governor's desk, so not law yet, was the Oregon Senate Bill 1546, which is about AI chatbots.
Oh, yeah.
Safety notifications and additional obligations is for minors again, transparency, you're speaking to a chatbot, reminders for people to take a break and the algorithms are addictive. And what's really interesting about the Oregon AI chatbot is I understand it came out Senate pretty much unanimously, and it's got a private right of action as well.
Oh, that's always an interesting one in the U.S. But you remind me that last week in my privacy class, I told my students about a New York, either a bill or a law, I got to look it up, that says that AI chatbots cannot present themselves as being attorneys. Now, why do you need a law to tell people they can't build a chatbot that represents itself as an attorney? And represent meaning it presents that it is an attorney or they're talking to a person rather than representing themselves in court. That was a weird play on words for attorneys, but okay.
Does that mean if somebody's tried?
Yeah. In Australia, the government issued a joint advisory that the Russian-based cyber criminal group INC Ransom is actively targeting private and government organizations in Australia and across the Pacific through spear phishing and the exploitation of unpatched vulnerabilities. They use double extortion tactics. So they threaten the unauthorized publication of sensitive personal and corporate data on dedicated leak sites if you don't pay a ransom. Authorities are strongly urging organizations to implement rigorous security mitigations and data protection protocols. And then following the active exploitation earlier this year, Australia's Cybersecurity Centre updated their critical advisory regarding vulnerabilities in the Cisco SD-WAN application, noting that the CVE, the critical vulnerability exploitation, CVE, can't remember what it stands for exactly. They have numbers, 2026, so they give the year first and then followed by the number 20128 and 20122 are now being compromised. So apply the latest software patches and collect relevant artifacts as you need to do it. In Singapore, the European Free Trade Association, so here we go, the European Free Trade Association, EFTA, and the Singapore Digital Economy. The Singapore Digital Economy Agreement has come into force for Singapore and Norway on March 1st, 2026. So this is enhancing a digital trade connectivity and establishing clear rules for cross-border data flows. It should facilitate seamless digital transactions, interoperable digital systems, all that good things for digital trade as part of Singapore's broader strategy to expand its network of digital economy agreements with European partners. In South Korea, the Personal Information Protection Commission, which is PIPC, is consulting on the appropriateness and validity of existing data privacy regulations, especially AI automated decision-making, cross-border transflows, cross-border data. Let's try that a third time. Cross-border data transfers, which y'all know doesn't mean you have to physically move something across the border.
Nope.
If you're in one country accessing a database in another, that's a cross-border data flow. And if you're a person that gets an email and you're in another country, guess what? That's a cross-border data flow too. Now, we don't go so strong as to say I'm traveling in another country and I open an email, so now all of a sudden it's a cross-border data flow. But if you're working from another country, you're in the U.S. and you happen to get in all the data subject access requests from Asia, that's a cross-border data flow.
It is interesting because that's not quite the way it works in Europe in a way, because you can be, if you go to another country for work and you're processing data on your laptop or whatever else whilst you're on holiday in another country, it's not really considered a data transfer.
If you're on holiday, but not your regular work.
No, if you're regularly working in another country,
Okay.
what? Because actually international data transfers tend to follow the contract, not the data.
Right.
So it's not an international data transfers until you've transferred it to a controller or processor in that third country. It's actually gone to another legal entity in that country. So if you're like working abroad, that wouldn't be considered an international transfer.
Other than most times, if you're working in another country, that's a different contract, because you have to establish an entity in that country to serve as the employer of record.
If you've got a company established in that country, then of course it's a transfer.
Yeah. And typically, just on the practical side, that's usually the way it works, right? You can't have a U.S. company with employees in, Europe that are working for the U.S. company. You typically got to have a European company that's the employer of record.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
That's where the law doesn't necessarily work with the actual practicalities of running a business.
True. Do you know what? One of the biggest problems nearly any of my customers have is global technology, local law. You've got technology that allows you to work across the globe without jurisdiction. Here we are recording this podcast. You're in the States. I'm in the UK. Paul's in the Netherlands.
And we're the only podcast with that, by the way, that has people located in different geographic regions, which makes us so great.
And we could have a guest on from India or China or wherever else, and that works.
Yeah. Someone's dog probably started howling at the so great, just say it.
But that's the 3 or 4 different jurisdictions, and you've got to run something that's now running in 3 or 4 different jurisdictions. And we're all humans, right?
Yeah. That's where the technology erodes or eradicates boundaries, because you don't know where someone is. The old adage of no one knows you're a dog on the internet, no one knows you're a dog in Europe on the internet.
Yep, true enough.
It's only that too. But that does remind me that the age verification, you talk about doing this and the different technologies that are coming up in that, and then the other affiliated laws that go along with age verification, right? You don't know where the children are.
Yep, that's true.
So where are the location laws? How are you going to go by the local laws of verifying, are they considered a minor there? If they're doing business on your platform, does it go by the laws of your country, or does it go by the laws of their country because they're somewhere else and you don't know where they are and they're using a VPN and faking their... Who knows, right? The technology is eradicating boundaries there. But on age verification issue, just to cycle us back, the FTC, now this was last week, one of the other stories I share with my students, the FTC, to me, shocking policy announcement. Okay,
Wow.
Maybe a little shocking. They issued a formal policy stating that they will not penalize online providers that collect personal data for the sole purpose of verifying a user's age without obtaining consent under the COPPA rule. And they have historically declined a lot of technological solutions for age verification. But now they're saying if you're collecting data for the sole purpose of verifying their age and you don't use it for anything else, you get rid of the data as soon as you verify their age. You don't store it. You don't save it. You delete it. you use a third party that does this, whatever, they will not penalize it if you follow the rules. And I think that is a big move for the FTC to do that. Because age verification laws now in some states are saying you have to do it. Now, whether we agree with them or not, can you imagine what a big bump that is between state and federal?
Yeah, and that goes full circle to that AAPD fine where we've said that digital identity providers aren't getting rid of the data and they're not doing it on devices and they are keeping more than they should do.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Some of the other things that happen, I hate to go back to New York, but I'm going to do it because this one's a sexy story. New York has a public consultation on proposed regulations. So if you're in New York, people, jump on this. Buy now, pay later lenders, introducing strict data privacy requirements for processing consumer information that you have to get their affirmative, explicit consent for using that data beyond what is necessary to provide the loans. And we all know those go straight into data brokers, right? But let's look at what else we got going on in Europe, Middle East, Africa. Tim just brought me more water. He must have heard me just clicking along as we're talking here. I'm not going to cover the things that we've talked about in the European Parliament. The EU's fourth omnibus package on simplification aims to reduce administrative burdens under the GDPR with small mid-cap enterprises. I think we talked about that. The European Data Protection Board, also several international authorities signed and issued a joint statement on creating an AI-generated imagery without consent, coordinated by the Global Privacy Assembly, which is in Dubai this year. Is it still in Dubai this year?
It is.
Y'all don't want to come to IAPP because of the U.S.'s thing. Maybe I don't want to go to Dubai because of the U.S.'s thing.
Yeah, Dubai is, and it certainly, and actually, whilst we're on that, if there is anybody who does listen to the podcast who is in the Middle East, and obviously our thoughts are with
absolutely
the real,
and that's not an afterthought. That is not an afterthought. Hearts and prayers and all go out to y'all. I know I'm in the U.S., which is hell itself. Within and outside the U.S., we have no idea what's coming next. Trust us.
But regardless of the political situation, nobody wants human consequence.
It's
right?
humans.
Yeah.
It's humans.
Exactly.
And Italy, the Garant issued a fine against a university for using facial recognition system to track student attendance. No, we did that here in the U.S. years ago. University of Arizona in Tucson, Arizona used it to track people it wasn't quite facial recognition. They used the RFID in their student ID card and facial recognition where they could to tell if students were not coming out of their rooms, if they were going to local bars, if they were spending their time in other areas of the university rather than going to class. They did it out of a good reason to try to early identify those students who might fail out of university because they're just not doing what they should be doing. But they never got consent for tracking students.
How dare you go out during
dare them, right? How dare them go do that?
College or university,
Yeah, Ralph would say, hell, let's go do the class at the bar. Had a law professor that would say that too. Oh my God, I love Michael Birch. Poland, the president of the Personal Data Protection Office imposed a substantial fine on a major delivery service after they found out they allowed external transport partners to handle sensitive customer information without mandatory legal agreements. In Portugal, the Cyberspace Administration issued an opinion on safeguards to protect children in digital environments. They need to do self-assessments, apply for certifications if they meet thresholds, things like that. Spain, back to the first story, emphasized the regional data storage is insufficient for maintaining digital security required by law if the underlying control systems remain dependent on centralized foreign infrastructure. Back to the whole, should we really be using U.S. technology companies? How do we get away from them? Sweden Post and Telecom Agency launched a formal investigation into several major service providers suspected of sharing customer service records with third-party data firms beyond what was originally authorized. Customers have to receive clear and transparent information so they can provide informed consent before their details are shared. Shocking.
Shocker.
Let's see, Australia, we talked about the e-Safety Commissioner 2-year longitudinal study for social media minimum age. But in Hong Kong, the Office of the Privacy Commissioner for Personal Data, alongside 60 international privacy and data protection authorities, issued a joint statement. We just talked about that a little bit on AI-generated imagery and the protection of privacy. India AI Impact Summit Declaration issued in New Delhi. Secure and Trusted AI. Indonesia is around child protection with the governance of electronic system implementation. Singapore, back to them, undertakings, 3 businesses, data incidents. It just goes on, and I don't even think I'm at the end of my list, but we're going to stop because we're at the end of our time.
Before we do stop, I've got a couple of really quick ones myself.
Let's go. Let's hear.
Quite breaking, actually. One is on the French courts. Their highest administrative court rejected an appeal from Criteo, an ad tech company, for a 40 million euro GDPR fine imposed by the CNIL for targeted advertising, transparency and consent with tracking technologies. The second one is the DPC in Ireland. This was actually the Datatilsnet. The Norwegian authority referred it to the Irish authority, and this is on Microsoft, which is about an access request. They failed to inform the complainant of their rights.
Shame on
And
them.
an enforcement notice about retention and disposal. Don't often see stuff about retention and disposal, so that's quite a big one. And so that's actually an enforcement notice rather than even a fine. That's you've got to change your practices. And the final one that I want to mention before I do say cheerio, it's my good friends, the ICO here in the UK. They have just issued a £66,000, so a small penalty.
Small penalty.
On Police Scotland, which is the law enforcement north of the border, for actually extracting the entire contents of a person's mobile phone after they reported an alleged crime with no good reason. So this is about proportionality. And they then put the full unredacted content into a misconduct disclosure bundle and shared it with a third party who should not have received it.
What are and that was law enforcement, right? Where's law enforcement does not care about our rights? Dadgummit. Okay, I'm going to ask one really stupid question. It's really stupid. The rest of y'all could just go on about your business. Y'all don't need to hear Kay ask this stupid question, but I'm going to do it anyway. Does your law enforcement have to give like a Miranda warning like we do here in the U.S.? That you have the right to shut up and please do?
Yes, it reads a bit different from your Miranda rights.
Because we have the guaranteed provision of counsel for criminal issues if you can't afford one. They should really have mandatory attorneys for civil infractions if you can't afford one, because you have just as significant rights being taken away like child custody. Anyway, back to the warnings.
The police must tell you, they identify themselves as the police. They must tell the person they're being arrested. They must tell them what the offence is, explain why the arrest is necessary, and inform them that they're not free to leave because they're under arrest.
Yeah, that would clarify some of the issues we have here where people think they're under arrest. They're in a police station. They're in a room. They're surrounded by police, and they think they don't have the right to leave. But the police actually have to tell them they're under arrest and you're not allowed to leave. But most people don't know that. But that's interesting.
The very famous phrase we have here is you do not have to say anything, but is the right to remain silent. It don't say anything, but if you do so, we may later rely upon it in court, blah, 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 blah.
Although here, apparently, ICE don't have to actually identify themselves, and they can wear full face masks and never actually show their face either. But hey, they're not technically considered typical law enforcement. So with that,
On that note,
we are going to end. Thank y'all so much for joining us. We love when y'all come listen to our podcast. We love it even more when you rate us and review us, as long as they're positive. And we love it even more than that if you engage in comments with us and let us know what you thought. Do you have more questions? Did you need more of a story behind a particular story? Is there a particular subject you would like us to do an entire episode on, like we've done on children's and vendors and some of these others? We're absolutely happy to do that. We love our fans, and we love it when y'all engage so we can provide you the information you need. So on that note, I think I'm going to let Ralph say bye first. That way the last thing you hear is bye, y'all.
I'll think about it. Goodbye.
Bye, y'all.
Now that was serious privacy. Please subscribe on your favorite podcast app and leave us a review. You can find us on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Blue Sky as Serious Privacy. Feel free to drop us a question or a comment. We'd love to hear from you.
If you're a data protection or privacy professional, you already know the pressure. Non-stop regulatory change, AI oversight, internal demands, and the expectation to somehow stay ahead of it all. And the old patchwork of tools just isn't cutting it anymore.
No, that's why TrustArc created a modern privacy management platform powered by Arc Intelligence. The TrustArc platform brings your workflows, evidence, research, tasks, and applications all together in one unified and intelligent workspace so you don't waste time digging, clicking, or context switching.
With Ask Arc, your privacy assistant, you can ask plain language questions about laws, jurisdictions, or even your own program data and get credible, cited answers based on NIMBY research and more than 1,000 global laws. It's explainable, transparent, and purpose-built for data protection and privacy.
So if you need to add a vendor, create a cookie banner, or start an assessment, quick actions take formally complex tasks, turn them into bite-sized guided workflows to save you time.
It's a platform that thinks like you, works like you, and helps you move faster with confidence, whether you're a seasoned DPO or you're just getting started.
See how modern privacy gets done. Explore Arc at trustarc.com/serious-privacy. That's trustarc.com/serious-privacy.